Well, good evening. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Women in Digital's In Conversation event with Robyn Denholm. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I'm Holly Hunt. I'm the founder and CEO of Women in Digital. If this is your first Women in Digital event, welcome. We hope it's the first of many. Women in Digital is a membership organisation focused on bridging the industry digital and technology skills gap by unlocking underrepresented talent. Tonight, we're so fortunate to be joined by some incredibly special guests, starting of course with Robyn Denholm herself, who needs no introduction. Thank you for joining us. Kate Jones, Women in Digital chairperson and advisor at SODA, among many other incredible roles. Special guests also include Allegra Spender, member for Wentworth, Melanie Silva, Managing Director of Google. A special shout out to our Women in Digital Advisory Board members who have flown from Brisbane to be here. So thank you, Mark Ringrose, Regional Vice President for Queensland, WA and South Pacific, quite a mouthful, from Salesforce, who is hosting here tonight. Thank you so much. We also have Terry Webber, who is the General Manager of Queensland. I'm tired. Regional Manager of Queensland, Northern Territory and PNG from Cisco. Lauren Somerville, CIO of the Lottery Corp. Special shout out to Bevan Slattery, serial entrepreneur, founder of SODA and strong WID supporter. Our Women in Digital ambassadors, Stevie, Vida, Brooke and her sisters, who may have greeted you on the way in. And finally, thank you to Ivan Chua, Director of Innovation Central Sydney at UTS, who has joined us today with a number of wonderful students. The future is looking very bright. So today we're immensely proud to launch our second annual Women in Digital report on driving change in tech. This has been a huge undertaking for our tiny but mighty team, but my goodness, the outcome is worth it. The report has been created to generate more data-driven conversations on how we can make this industry a place where everyone can belong. And at a time when you can't escape Australia's focus on the economy, productivity and workplace participation, there couldn't be a better time for us to discuss the pivotal role that women should be playing in this equation. This year's report shows some great promise and momentum, eye-opening differences in perception versus reality, and some key areas where leaders and companies have the opportunity to drive further change. Our report surveyed over 1,000 men and women working in the digital and technology industry to understand their different career perspectives and experience as different ages and stages within the industry. From the report, there are 3 key pillars which we've broken down into the path to progress, the missing middle, and the pipeline. Now, when I say positive change, it really is incredible that in the last 12 months, we have seen a 5% reduction in the number of people who identify a boys' club within the industry. Stability around the number of people that say their workplace enables them to balance their work-life balance needs. In the scheme of things, when we hear so much about this great call back to the office and needing to be in the office 5 days a week, I think that's incredibly promising around the value that the technology industry can bring to women's lives. We've also seen a 14% increase in the number of respondents who said that they were confident in their workplace, that their workplace ensures pay parity over the last 12 months. Thank you, Wajir. What piqued my interest in the numbers was also the gender split around equality in the workplace. 81% of men agree that men in their workplace are supportive of women in their career paths. That compares to 62% of women that agree with that statement. And while 73% of men believe all employees have equal opportunities, only 56% of women agree. So what's clear here is that we need to be having more robust conversations around the lived experience to bridge the gap between perception and reality. Now the missing middle. This is where the heat gets turned up in the career and caregiving juggle, be it for ageing parents, young children, or maybe even both. I imagine many of you feel seen when we start speaking about these findings. There is general agreement across gender around the financial and career impact that comes with raising children. And despite that general agreement in the data, it is women who consistently step back into part-time work. 68% of women and 62% of men agree that having a baby and stepping back into part-time work will impact someone's ability to progress their career. It's an area you'll be living and breathing as I am. I've got my third baby on the way. What was I thinking? Thank you. But, considering only 29% of respondents working part-time are actually encouraged to apply for senior and executive roles in their company, compared to 46% who are working full-time, it's clear that part-time employees are often penalised. They're offered less opportunity than their full-time peers, and that corresponds to a bit of a challenging situation when you're really juggling in the middle of your career. Lastly, we dove into the pipeline, an area where we're seeing clear progress in the opportunities for those early in career. We've seen a 15% increase in respondents who agree their workplace has a strong, supportive graduate program for diverse digital talent, going from 35% in 2024 to 50% in 2025. Similarly, 63% of respondents under 25 say they have strong female role models in their workplace. This is incredibly positive. But unfortunately, at the later stages of their career, the support and encouragement diminishes. For us to retain engaged and productive team members, we need to ensure there is investment in our people, no matter what age and stage. I truly could go on all night. There are so many other pockets of gold in the report, and I can't wait for you to dive in further. As a thank you for joining me, on your flyers you will see a QR code where you can get an early release to download and go through those insights. I hope they spark some valuable conversations, whether it's around the boardroom, lunchroom, or dining table at home. We need to continue to talk about our lived experience to bridge the gap of understanding and continue to push to see women leading the way in tech. I would now like to invite Kate Jones, our chairperson, up to the stage.
Thank you so much, Holly. And it was great to make this date because we're counting down to when you can no longer fly. I think this is the last time she can fly interstate. Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many amazing people in the room here tonight coming together to celebrate women in digital, and particularly our male champions that have joined us here this evening. And a special shout out to my boss, Bevan Slattery, who's here. So thank you, Bev. He does provide me a lot of flexibility, probably more, anyway, we'll talk about that later, Bev. It is actually wonderful to be here tonight with all of you. And as Holly has said, we've got the launch of the report, but also what an interesting time for us to come together as women in this field when, so much conversation is happening about productivity in our nation. And, everyone in this room understands that we believe in order to drive productivity, you must embrace technology, you must embrace innovation. You have to, stare down the fear in the community about the digital economy and find new ways of working to support people to transition. And, one thing that we're very clear on, as Holly said in her remarks, is that we also know communities that have great productivity embrace the role of women in their workplaces. And so for us, it's a really interesting time to come together to actually reflect on that and ensure, and I'm sure, Allegra, that you will have a very vocal voice in this to make sure that the role that women can play in our economy by actually supporting them to participate in the workforce longer and in more meaningful roles is also going to be very key to driving productivity as well as the tech opportunity. So to me, that is a good segue to say I've got a very fortunate opportunity tonight to actually have an conversation with Robyn Denholm, who's given up her time and her very busy schedule to be here supporting women in digital. We've known each other now for quite a few years when we first worked together on the Tech Council. So for those that don't know, Robyn has had a very, I was going to say long, I shouldn't say that, a very esteemed career that continues and will continue for many years to come. Robyn, of course, has served as the director of Tesla since August 2014 and has been the chair since November 2018. She is also a director of Blackbird Adventures and is the director of the Technology Council with me. And she also served as the inaugural chair from 2021 through to 2025. And it's wonderful that Scott Farquhar, the new chair, has been invited to be a part of the very select group at the Economic Roundtable. With her family, and I see that both Victoria and Matt here are here tonight, she founded Wallamai Capital Group in 2021, which invests in endeavours and partners with other organisations to improve environmental outcomes, drive diversity, and also support community engagement in Australia. Wallamai recently became the majority owner of the New Look WNBL with a new national competition for elite basketball players. And very excitingly, they started with wage parity. So we're working on that too, aren't we, Amanda, in rugby league? It'll be an issue. Ms Denholm has also had a long career in engineering and technology and has worked in companies both in the US and here in Australia, many are household names, including Telstra, Juniper Networks and Toyota Australia. And after our session with Robyn, I will then welcome up the independent MP, Allegra Spender. Congratulations on your re-election, Allegra. I know they threw everything at you. And I know what that feels like. But she's also the Parliamentary Friends of Tech and has been a great supporter of tech in the Australian Parliament since she's been there. So it's been wonderful to have her ongoing support. And of course, the Managing Director of Google Australia and New Zealand, Mel Silver, who's also been having some interesting times. But wonderful to have you both here. So Robyn, without any further ado, please take your chair in the hot seat. I think you're the orange one. Yep.
Hi, everyone.
What? Yeah, that's right. Oh, thanks, Sarah. So, Robyn, I gave a little bit about your history, and I've heard you speak passionately before about sort of growing up in your childhood, working at a service station in your family business, and then going on to chair one of the largest tech companies in the world. Also with still a bent on cars there, which we like to see. And I mentioned before that Victoria and Matt are here tonight. I think one of the things we love to hear from leaders like yourself is what are some of those early lessons that, from your experience that have stayed with you and that you've tried to pass on to women that you mentor and also your own family?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm a big admirer of everything the women in digital are doing. I think it's really important that we bring women into the technology sector. When we, from a TCA perspective, we're looking at the ability to generate 1 million jobs in technology. Women are the untapped source, if you like, in technology. So for me, it's really important to bring more women, both mid-career, as the report was saying, but also early in the career. And that's why, from a student perspective, I'm really pleased you're here. So my journey goes way back. So my parents opened a service station when I was 7, very formative age when you're 7. And both my parents worked in that. So yes, I can change tyres, and yes, I can pump petrol, and yes, I can do lots of different things, because when you're in a family business, as many of you probably already know, you do everything. So everything from cleaning the bathrooms through to totaling the accounts or, chasing debtors. I went to my very first debtors conference when I was 14, although nobody knew I was 14. I was dressed to the nines and I had a briefcase with nothing in it. And
I do love props. Yeah, that's another takeout.
My dad said, all you need to do is turn up. You don't even need to say anything, because if you put your name down on the creditors sheet, we'll get paid. So I did. So anyway, so what I learnt about that period of time was that business is all about people. And yes, it is about technology, but it's about people first. And so when you're running a small business, it's about the people that you employ, but it's also about your customers. And it doesn't matter. My dad was classic. You could have a terrible day, but he would walk out and he'd greet the customers with a big smile from ear to ear. And it was like there was, sunshine from heaven coming down. And so for me, it's about how you treat customers. It's how you work with employees, how you actually show up every day when you're in business. And to me, that is very much true today for the businesses that I'm involved in, the board tables that I'm around. It's about people. It's about connecting with people. It's also about, sharing experiences and those types of things.
Yeah, and I think I've also heard you, and we'll go into your current career, but just it's always, I just think, when you meet leaders like this, it's always nice to know what sort of fueled them early. And now I've heard you say before that you weren't necessarily the best student, but I find that very hard to believe from the work that I've seen you do. And in today's sort of changing world that we've been talking about, do you still think that skills gets the attention it deserves in education and work? Or how do you see that?
Yeah, so for me, I wasn't the best student. I had to study hard to actually get good grades. And it's about curiosity for me. So I've always been curious to learn more things. So the things that I actually know how to do, I don't value those as much. I actually want to learn the next thing, and I want to sort of learn the next thing. And that's why technology for me is so exciting, because there's always a next thing. In fact, there's a next thing after the next thing when you're still working on the first thing. So to me, there's always that steady stream of change. And some people find that de-energizing. I find it very energizing. And so from a learning perspective, again, if we fast forward now, everybody's worried about AI and the jobs that are going to suddenly disappear. Well, I've been hearing that, because I'm old, I've been hearing that in waves of technology. So I definitely was around before people had email accounts. I remember actually when I was at Toyota in Australia having to get permission to have an email account. Can you imagine that? So, and people were worried that the internet, because that was obviously in the early 90s, people were like, no, that's going to take everybody's jobs. Well, fast forward, 30 years, that's not the case. So, and I think it's exactly the same with AI. And so learning how to learn, to me, is the most important thing. And so I believe our education system in Australia is really, really good. Now, I know we like to bag it. We like to bag everything in Australia. So, but having lived and worked overseas and employed people from all around the world, we actually produce really good people in Australia, well-rounded education. Definitely this ability to keep learning. I've had 4 pivots in my career, as I like to say, and I'm probably still got another 2 before I finally retire, even though these guys think I will never retire. But from my perspective, that ability to learn something new is a real gift that our education system does provide, and so that's my encouragement to students coming through.
Curiosity. You've also described your career as collecting Pokemon cards, so like of skills. What's sort of been the most unexpected Pokemon card you've picked up when it comes to those skills that you're talking about?
Yeah, I actually think there have been a few. I think I actually, the most significant Pokemon card that I think I have collected is one that I've worked really hard. It may come as a surprise to you that I actually hate public speaking. So, but the way that and I'm not comfortable with it, but is actually just doing it and doing it over and over again to the point where you can actually pretend there's no one in the audience and you can actually speak to the person that's asking you questions, as opposed to being worried about doing that. So that's one. I think also that ability to work with really smart people, to me, is a huge Pokemon card. So again, when I'm looking at opportunities, I want to know, am I going to learn from these people around the table? Am I going to learn from who I'm sort of working with, both who's working for me and who's working with me? To me, that learning from other people is a gift. And again, one of those.
It's a joy. Yeah. Also why I quit state parliament. Yeah. Wasn't learning anymore. On another thing you're very passionate about is sport. And you and I have talked about that a lot, because I do a lot of work in tech and sport, and particularly the role that it can play in lifting women up generally in our community. Last year, as I said in my opening remarks, you became the majority owner of the WNBL. What motivated you to make that investment, and what changes do you want to see in women's sport?
Well, to me, sport is a really big part of the Australian community. So, so my parents immigrated to Australia, so I'm obviously first generation born Australian, and the way we integrated into community was through sport. So, and my view is it is such a bedrock of Australian society that we should cherish it. I often say if we are as competitive in our technology world as we are in our sporting world, we will beat everybody. Doesn't matter who they are. So, and so sport is about that fabric. In the family office, we have sport in the community bucket. And it's not because it's not professional sport, it's professional sport, right? So because it brings community together. And what interested us in basketball. Basketball is our family sport, so I can blame Matt. But I actually used to go and watch the Kings in Sydney 40 odd years ago when they were first starting here, and so that actually got me interested. The kids both played, but it actually, when we moved to the US, it was sort of like the sport that we all gravitated towards, and it is a global sport. So it's being played in Africa, it's being played in Europe, it's being played in the US. And so, and we punch above our weight, particularly in the women's side. We have won six medals in the Olympics. We've won countless World Cups. We've even beaten the US. How many other teams have done that? So from my perspective, again, if I come back to the very first thing we were talking, it's about people. It's about the talent that we have in this fabulous world sport of basketball, and the women exemplify that. And so, and it's a fabulous team sport as well. Anyone can play. You just need a pair of sneakers and a ball, right? You're cool. You might need a ring. You might need a hoop. So, but to me, that's why. And it's been an underinvested sport in Australia. So Basketball Australia, bless their cotton sockses, this is the oldest women's league in Australia. It's been going for 45 years. We've produced talent that, as I said before, beats the rest of the world, plays in the WNBA, more so, again, than the men, even earlier than the men in terms of playing in the WNBA. And it wasn't being invested in. So when you have the national body owning a league, it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And so from our perspective, it was about putting that right. It was about making sure that the women's game was getting as much as the men's game. I love the men's game as well. We actually own majority of the Kings and Flames in Sydney as well. So, but to me, it was really about elevating it to the way that the talent deserves, and so that's what we're doing.
And on the talent, I sort of mentioned earlier about the pay parity and your commitment to the conditions that I guess for women that are playing the sport. Also, for those that are in the room, we are also looking for sponsors. Anyone that wants to come and work with the WNBL, we're very happy to have you. It's a growing sport with amazing owners and investment, and of course, it's Olympics. We've got the Australian Olympics here in 2032, and we always see that spike in support for Olympic-based sports. Is there anything that sort of you want to see in basketball in the next sort of 5 years, 7 years, your vision in that regard?
I mean, as I said, I think the talent is already here. It's the second fastest growing sport after soccer in Australia at the grassroots level. Again, they need to see their idols play. They need to see their idols play here, not just on TV from overseas. So to me, it is about that sort of role model and idols that they can aspire to. And it's also a sport that's played in regional Australia as well. So it is one of the leagues that has more regional representation than it does capital city representation. So to me, it's for everybody. And again, that whole diversity aspect is there. And our players are playing everywhere around the world. So to me, it's about elevating the talent and actually showcasing the talent. And I know we've done some amazing things from a content perspective. You will see some awesome things in the weeks to come because we're on the countdown to the beginning of the new season later next month.
It's really exciting, and some of the things that I've seen is
scary, but it's also exciting.
Yeah, the countdown clock is ticking, but but you're right. Like, it's one of those sports that is an international sport, played by everyone, huge diversity, particularly into multiculturalism. So it is one that hasn't had the support that it should have had as a sport. So it is very exciting. And also I remember I was actually in a, I haven't told you this, Robyn, but I was in a Participation Australia meeting for rugby league, and Brad Fittler, for the people in New South Wales, he's like, hey, Jonesy, there was like, is it basketball? Are they paying their women parity? Like, is that something we need to look at? I was like, good, there you go. So it's actually, it does, when you set a standard like that, it does put pressure across the whole ecosystem. So before I bring up our other panellists, I did want to, Holly spoke about it today. It's dominating all of the media nationally. You know, we work up the Fin Review, it's all over it. I'm sure it's in Forbes too. As Australia faces, as we do, finally having this realisation, I know you've spoken about it for years, but as we are facing the reality of the stagnation that's happened in our economy and the failure for embracing innovation and a lack of productivity for where we should be as a country, what role do you see women playing in that? And what do you, and I know of course you've also got the work that you're leading for the government in regards to R&D. So do you want to just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that you can't open a newspaper or a magazine at the moment without hearing the word productivity and without hearing the word technology or R&D. And it, you know, maybe it's because, you know, I'm leading this work, but it's everywhere. And I actually think that's a really good thing. So again, being a proud Australian, for me, what got us to where we are today isn't what's going to take us forward. So we've had 30 years of amazing economic prosperity in Australia. It wasn't always like this. We had dips and busts in the 80s. I was around, I can tell you. So, but to me, as we look forward, we're not going to have the same proportion of our GDP being shipped off overseas in the minerals bucket. We might do it in critical minerals, but it's not going to be in coal. It's not going to be in iron ore. It's not going to be that. And there's nothing wrong with those things. To me, that's what got us to where we are. What we've got to do is fill up the bucket on the GDP side with something else. And that something else has to be what we develop here in Australia on the technology side. And the way we do that is we showcase our entrepreneurs, we showcase what's being done in all of the verticals, so whether it's in the medtech space or even in the mining tech space. To me, all of those spaces, we do punch above our weight. We do have more unicorns. We do have more startups than per head of GDP than other companies. We've just got to showcase it more so that kids coming out of school come into these spaces. Again, I'm an accountant by trade. I'll say that very low. But by the same time, we don't need any more accountants or we don't need any more lawyers. We need more technologists and more people who are actually willing to start companies and grow them here in Australia. And so to me, when I look at the R&D landscape, we're looking at the whole of the landscape, the end to end. We have the best research. We're top quartile in research and we're bottom quartile in commercialisation. Why? Right? We can sell shit. We know how to do that, right? So my view is we just need to focus on the things that we're missing and actually add to that skill set because we are entrepreneurial as a country, as a nation. And so that's my big pitch in terms of what we can do better. And again, I keep saying we are a sporting nation at heart. We just need to start looking at the league table of where we sit from an R&D perspective versus what we do on the sporting side. I'd love to have the Olympics of the R&D companies and actually be proud of the ones that we are developing and built here and that type of thing, and attracting others in.
And also getting those settings right, the government settings to actually make it possible. So no, it's a lot of exciting work to happen with the R&D review, and I think unlocking that is going to be such a huge opportunity for the next generation of young Australians. Absolutely. Too. Yeah. So on that end, I will, speaking of people that are at the table making decisions and changing, can you please welcome up to the panel discussion Allegra Spender and also Mel Silver from Google. Yeah, talk about a power panel here. Hey, so firstly, I want to start kindly, nicely, because I'm such a lovely human being from Queensland. I'm from Queensland, here to help. I stole it off Kevin Rudd for those that got that. So I'll start with you, Allegra. What was the first piece of technology you're obsessed with? But it's for all three of you.
This is very daggy and really ages me. Speak and spell. So if anyone is, if you grew up in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, I was born in 78, there was a little red box called Speak and Spell. It would say a word and you had to spell it, and, it'd go sort of chime if you got it right. And I thought that was really fun because it's kind of gamification of learning. And, that was high tech in 84 or something.
And Mel?
I think you stole my thunder because I had the Texaco one. My dad brought it back from me from America. But I would probably have to say it was when the family did get the first sort of desktop computer. Like, my mum and dad had a small business too, and so it was my job to enter in all of the receipts into like the Lotus 123 spreadsheets.
Yeah, Lotus.
Yeah, pre Excel, baby. And so that it used to blow my mind just how, and then printing something out, how magical that was.
And yourself, Robyn?
I'm much older, so I remember when Mum and Dad got a colour TV, and I was fascinated with it because it was in the lounge room, which we weren't allowed to go into unless we had guests, right? So we would sneak in there and turn the TV on to actually see the colour. I think the other thing for me was the first thing I actually remember really begging Mum and Dad to buy was a camera, like a Kodak camera with the thing. And I still have some of the photos that I took, which are the worst photos on the planet. But for me, it was like, oh my God, I can actually take photos myself and have them developed, and actually that was cool. So I must have been about 8 or 9 when that was.
That's very cool. Oh God, I remember when we got a colour TV too, but maybe that's a Queensland thing. Maybe it was late up there. Has there been, the other question, just so that people get a little bit more understanding of you, like, has there been someone that is completely unexpected who sort of shaped your life or your thinking, that could either be in business or tech or outside, but just sort of, while we're all sitting here on this panel tonight? Mel, you go.
When I was young or now?
Well, I'm going with either. I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna draw on a current example. Like, I am a big Beyonce fan, and just stay with me for a minute here. I look at the way that she has sort of run her career, and it's actually similar to what you were saying, Robyn. There's a passion there about the artistry of what she's doing and what she's trying to do, and the way she narrows in on it and completely changes the game all the time and shocks. I think if you really sort of study the art of Beyonce's career, you kind of go, wow, she's really taken a lot of risks. She's leaned into things that are strange and new, and she's really run her own race. So I'll stick with Beyonce.
Yeah, going back to making their first costumes back in the day with the sequins with Mum.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Right, so I know these things.
I'm going to use a really local, just actually a friend of mine, and when I was considering going into politics, and he said, oh, forgive yourself now for the mistakes that you're going to make. And I have to say that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given, because, doing something, particularly something public, particularly something where you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes, and they're going to be embarrassing, to be able to get over those failures quickly has been, it's been something I have learned later in my life, and it has been so important.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so the first person that I sort of thought, oh, you can do that, was actually Maggie Thatcher. So I remember riding my scooter, so I was quite young, and she had just been elected in the UK, and I was like, oh my God, a shopkeeper's the child of a shopkeeper actually is being the Prime Minister of the UK, when I didn't really know what the Prime Minister did, but that was okay. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do something like that. So to me, those early, and then the other ones are sporting heroes. So basically, Yvonne Cawley. I remember her winning Wimbledon for the first time. And then Shane Gould, because I used to think I was a good swimmer. So I remember trying to do 30 laps after she won her gold medal, going, holy cow. The next training session.
She's phenomenal when you look back at what she achieved at that time. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, and then Billie Jean King, when she had her famous, grudge match. Yeah, I remember that as well. And I actually got to meet her at a Fortune conference, actually, in the US years later. And so to me, it's sort of like having people, because if you think about it, when I started working, we didn't have any female leaders not in Australia at all, basically.
No, that's right. And the old adage about you cannot be what you cannot see, but it makes a real difference when you. I actually don't agree with that because you can, but it makes it so much closer to home and realistic to be actually I could do that. Yeah, that's and on that note, just because you are pretty formidable, all three of you, is there a time that you could share with the group here where you've backed an idea and no one else has agreed with you, but you've just stuck to your guns and it's actually worked out? Like, is there an example that you could share where you've kind of, sometimes you've got to dig deep, right? Not referring to the last week of your life, Mel.
Look, I instead of giving you a real tangible example, I just think for all of the women in the room in these sort of roles, like that's every day. Like that is every single day, and sometimes you're not leading by consensus. Sometimes you are like on an island making calls on your own, and sometimes there is like the room is split 50-50, and you have to have that courage and you have to have that resilience and back yourself. There's nothing that you and a whiteboard can't figure out.
Allegra?
Look, I'd say here. I completely agree with that. Like recently, I've been really someone passionate, focused on tax reform of all things, and I've been talking about this for the last 3 years. And I remember when I first started talking about it, people were like, "Oh, Allegra, do you want to win a second term, or is this? Do you want to be a one-term wonder? Because you're talking about tax, and that is a surefire way out." And so I think, I'm really glad I did, and I'm really proud of it. But you do have moments where you go, "Oh God, what am I doing here? Is this?" And we're sort of. If it's not what other people have done, just going, okay, trying to come back to why do you think this is important? And I think you often do when you're doing something different is having to keep on coming back to that why, because you will get pushback. And so you've got to keep coming back to why did I think this? Why do I believe this? Try and reinforce that and then go out again.
Yeah, I actually resonate with both answers because every day you're making decisions, I think, that could be game-changing or they could be complete flops, but you've got to actually go and do stuff. And my view is if you don't make mistakes, you're not pushing hard enough. But also big career moments to me are things that could have gone really badly. I mean, even when I took on the chair role at Tesla, I can tell you the number of people that told me that I was a lunatic to do that. And I probably was a lunatic, but it was, to back a company with a founder that actually is trying to change the world. And at that point, it was 2018. The company was on the verge of going broke or bankrupt, as Elon would say. And so, to me, leaving Telstra, which was a big deal here, and doing that was. In hindsight,
it's brave.
In hindsight, it was courageous. I didn't think it was courageous at the time. I thought it was doing the right thing to actually help a company that I really, really did believe in. But again, you have those moments all the way through, even just helping companies. So because I'm old, I've been through a few different financial crises, including 2008 when I was a brand new CFO. And being in those roles and actually getting the company through is a huge learning experience, right? So, yeah.
On the report that Holly released today, some of the findings which Holly spoke about in her opening remarks, this one's to you, Allegra, if you don't mind, given where you're having influence in your daily life now. Our data shows that more workplaces do offer flexible arrangements, yet more women are still saying that school hours negatively affect their careers. So the flexibility is there, but the caring is there. What's your experience, and what are you sort of seeing in the corridors of power when you're having those conversations on behalf of your own community and also women in the workforce?
So I have 3 children. Crazy. Also, Mel, it turns out I have 3. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing to do, but it is wonderful. And it is not easy, and it wasn't easy at the time of, they're pretty close together, sort of. I had 3 under 4 for a bit, so that was busy. So it still is. And I guess, so for me, it's really important. I was very lucky. My mum was an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family business as well. But, so I saw, every single day someone trying to run a business and trying to have kids and managing that. And, what she did, which was interesting, is she drew quite hard lines, and she was like, I'm not coming to a netball match unless you're in the final. It's like, okay, so
I totally support that. I am 100% down with that.
So she wouldn't. I'd leave her on Saturday morning. She'd be sitting in bed reading the papers. But on finals day, she would be there if I got there. So that was an interesting incentives structure. But I think it's sort of more broadly, how do we change this? I think our expectations of ourselves as parents are increasing, and are probably higher than they were actually when I think of my mum bringing me up. So I don't think we're going to take that off. I actually think the difference we need to make is share the caring, and I will keep on coming back to this, because if we're not sharing the caring, and this is where you see all the trajectories in terms of incomes. It's all great until everyone has kids, and then women go one way and go another. And I think, when you're looking at the reporting around, women's experiences, the big cultural change I think we should be pushing in our businesses is, how many men are taking paternity leave in a significant time? Because if men are taking, 6, 12 months off, then I think you've got a workplace which is genuinely about shared caring. If you don't, women will always feel that emotional burden. So from a public policy point of view, I'm a big pusher in terms of more of the paid parental leave to be split, use it or lose it, for the second carer, because, until men are really early on, and it's not, and I'm making broad generalisations, but in general terms, if unless men are sort of spending really significant time early on, then you don't, then that doesn't change. So yeah, that's my policy piece, but also I think from a business point of view, that's what I think we should be looking at.
Yeah, no, I've had a girlfriend for years who's always advocated that we always talk about the workplace because it's easier to talk about in public life when really we should be talking about the home and what's happening in the home. So that's very interesting. But I'm going to ask you, Mel, about workplaces because they do have a critical role. And I think you got a few laughs, Holly, when you referenced that men and women have very different perceptions about equality at work, from particularly in regards to pay and progression in their careers. How can organisations close that gap and help turn that into a reality to make it more equitable?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a confidence gap or an arrogance gap. It's one of the two.
Probably both, really.
Yeah. Look, I think it's just about really practical things, right? At Google, we look at kind of those moments that just matter, right? And it's hiring, it's pay rise time, it's promotion time, and it's performance reviews. And if you've got enough kind of signal, and, I want to differentiate noise from signal in this conversation, then it's actually not too hard to govern, right? Now, I will qualify what I'm saying with I've been leading the Australian business for nearly 8 years now, and I am the person sitting in that chair and sitting at the front of that people council saying, what's going on, holding you to account, metrics rule this conversation. If we don't have the metrics, we can't manage it, all these sorts of things. So, you've got to have people willing to have that conversation. And look, controversially, I would probably say, we are in an organisation at Google where we do have a lot of programs in place in tech roles, like hardcore coding tech roles. The pipeline's just not there. And so, when we do things like WGEA reporting, that's inherently going to skew the data if you've got, men who've been around for a really long time and women who have only just started to join. So even if we hired everyone in the talent pool, it'll never be at those levels. Look, in terms of the opinions of men versus women, I think we can't underestimate just how much of a shift has happened. I mean, even just in my working life, you kind of talked about you can't be it unless you see it. I feel so blessed that when I walked into my first job, my boss and my MD were women. And I just thought, yeah, that whole women's equality thing, we've done it, nailed it. I'm 19 walking into this place going, what's the big deal? And then 3 or 4 years later, you start a different job and you look around and you're the only woman in the room. And that still happens far too often, right? But there has been a massive shift. And so I can sort of understand why men might look around, especially older men, and go, well, yeah, the bloody world's changed. But women are still going, yeah, but. And then, look, the only final point I would make is I think that the policy settings in relation to parental leave that you discussed are exactly spot on. There's other moments, right? And I think I've got a 4-year-old at the moment and one, so 3, but one in about to go into year 12 soon. So I've got a big spread.
Yeah, that's
and
a lot.
that transition from daycare to school is the killer.
Yeah. Who can empathise with that?
Daycare's like a walk in the park.
Yeah, I know. And then prep, they want you to have your child back. Really
Bloody
early
holidays.
In the day. Yeah.
And what do you mean I've got to pick them up at 3 o'clock? So, there are other countries that I think are doing much better in this regard, and we don't have to invent this. We can adopt, I think. We just need to look at those different moments.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we've talked about it for so long. We just actually need to fix it. Now, one of the things that we actually are very proud of at Women in Digital, it's been quite deliberate, we've talked about it at our advisory board, is that we actually want to celebrate men that are lifting women up, and we certainly, and that's why for us it was quite important. We've got men on our advisory board, some of our major funders and supporters like Salesforce here today, and are men. And I think we also just want to focus on some of those stories where you've actually had, a male mentor or someone in your working life that's actually helped get you to where you are. Is there a story that comes to mind for any of you, or Robyn?
Yeah, I might start on that because when I started, I had the opposite experience. So I went to Arthur Andersen here in Sydney, and I was one of 32 in our group. It was the first cohort that was 30% women. Wow. There was no partners that were female in the country, not even in the city. That we had to import a partner just as I was leaving 5 years later from the US, because there were no Australian partners at that point. We had one female manager, and then not much else. So I did not work for another woman for many, many years. So most of my early career were male mentors. So I went from Anderson's to Toyota. So you can imagine the diversity there, right? But I had a CFO and so I was 3 levels below the CFO. This CFO, and there was me and probably 3 other women peers at that point. He was awesome. So chain smoking, so I'm sure part of my asthma was exacerbated by him, but he was awesome. He would, and he was also ahead of his time from a technology perspective, so he would code and actually show us what he was doing and then work with us, and I learnt more from him in the 5 years that I worked for him. And I didn't, as I said, I was not directly reporting to him. It just amazing. And then again...
did he reach down, Robyn? Was that more... Yeah.
And it wasn't just me, it was the cohort. He had this whole thing about lifting women up, and he was front and centre all the time. Because again, Japanese automotive company, my name was Robyn. Obviously, they thought I was male in Japan, because why would you have a female in that role? So... so to me, that early experience was really well. I had to move to the US before I actually had a female boss.
Yeah, wow.
So,
yeah, long time. What about yourselves?
Actually, a guy called John Daly, who's used to be CEO of the Grattan Institute, when I was really interested in public policy, and but wasn't working in public policy. I was working in fashion at the time, and I reached out to him, and then he just invited me places, including to a conference they had. I remember I just had my first child, and I was travelling with a massive breast pump, trying to sort of express. For those people who've been through this, it's lots of fun. But it's interesting. At different points in my career, he's really he's put me forward, and I think that's having people who know you, and again, might not be necessarily your boss, but people who recognise value that you have and then are willing to back you. And when I was thinking about running for Parliament, I called him, and as someone I respected. And again, you know, sometimes when you don't have the confidence necessarily in yourself to say, well, should I do this, shouldn't I do this? Having people out there who go, you know what, you can do this, has been incredibly helpful, and he's been one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, mine would be... he used to actually have my job. His name was Karim Temsamani, and he was one of the first country managers for Google. And, you know, we kind of started at Google at around the same time. And so we were nooglers together. And, you know, there was a few things that made him a really special wing person for me. One was, you know, he kind of accepted there were no experts in the internet back then, and so he was just open and curious and could be wrong. So it always felt like he was more a partner than a boss. Anyway, as it would have it, he went off to have this incredible career in the US, and then finally came back to Asia. And I remember applying for the job, the managing director role for Australia, and I didn't get it. And he was the hiring manager at the time, and he came to Sydney, and we went for a bit of a walk, and he said to me, you know, look, it's just this particular role, this particular time, you just pipped at the post, but here's what I think you should do. And he kind of offered me this opportunity at a time when it probably would have made or broken me, you know, like when you don't get a job, there's such important moments when you don't get it. And he just went, right, I'm going to take you and stretch you. And he threw me into a role that I had no business doing, right? It was sort of like what you were saying before, Robyn, like if you complain about something long enough, you get the job to fix it. I used to whinge about this department all the time. It's like, well, come and run it in Asia. I was like, okay. And hands down, it was the best thing that ever happened. And so I think for me, a wing person and a great sponsor is someone who sees your spark and continues to invest in it, and then pushes you to do things that are a bit beyond your skis, but has got your back when you're doing it. So yeah,
that's really exciting. So yeah.
Can I just add something? So when I came back to Australia and was at Telstra in the COO role, so I had all the technology groups. So everybody from the guys who dug the holes in the ground, put the cables in the pits, all the way to fix your phone at home or the mobile network or all that sort of stuff. So massive amount of engineers. So 15,000 employees, 15,000 contractors. And our numbers were terrible at the senior level for women. And so we were like, well, that can't be. I mean, I'm the leader of this group. We've got to actually do something. So we worked with HR at the time, and we actually created a sponsors program. And so, and the first thing we did was to get the males in the room who were all in the leadership position, from team leader all the way through, and actually taught them how to be, or ran some workshops on how to be an effective sponsor. Because it is, I mean, particularly when you've only ever worked with males, or only, you know, very rarely worked with females, they wanted to know how to do it. And actually the rates went up. So I was only in that role for 2 years. In that 2 years, the numbers doubled in terms of the pipeline coming through that were ready to be.
That's really interesting, right? Because you actually break down one of the barriers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because it's like, it's not that people don't want to be sponsored or don't want to be good advocates. They may not know how. And so particularly in technology, when, my view is that not everybody is the best people person in leadership positions. Actually helping people to overcome those fears and be able to be a good mentor, good sponsor, that I think that's something that the WID should look at, actually.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Actually, yeah, yeah, they don't do it particularly well in politics, do they, Allegra? It's very slapdash and very yes, you don't get to choose that. You just got to ship up or shape up or get out. I will just finish. I know we're running out of time here, and it's so insightful, I think, to get the mix of what has led you to be here today, your support and the active decisions you make in your daily lives to actually create that change around you. I think but I feel like I probably should touch a little bit on AI, given that's dominating everyone's sort of thinking at the moment. And I know there was a figure out this week that I think, if we do adopt AI here in Australia, it's going to add $111 billion to our economy. What's your advice to women that that might not have? We've also seen a lot of data about women not embracing AI at the same rates as men. What's sort of your advice about AI? I know that Katie Page is very, very bold about this, saying that first of all, download an app today and start doing it every day, and then just build your skills. Like, what's your advice to women as we do see AI sort of change the way that we do work?
I would go with that advice at the starting point. I think that is absolutely critical. I think, I think that's where to go. But I also think it's seeing the opportunities as well as the threat. Like, I think it's very confronting to people, and I think it's particularly can be confronting to young people. But I also think we need to look at it